Hi, I'm Sharon, and can you believe it? This is story number 11, and it's called Zippy. And I've written this because this has been a difficult time for us, and I think everybody should have a smile or two. Now, death is never funny, but morticians are sometimes hilarious, and some are, as you know, just plain nuts, and that happens actually to apply to me. You know that all of my characters are based on family, friends, associates. They're actually a conglomeration of all of them. And Bessie May is based on some of the characteristics of myself, what has happened to me, and also on an aunt who is very Southern and whom I just adored. Also, Beauregard is based on one of my uncles who had a glass eye, and as a child I was perplexed on which eye to look at. You're going to be introduced to a deputy in this story, and of course, because it's me, I exaggerate the humor. On with our story. Thank you for joining me today. And would you please give me an emoji or just say hi to me so I know who's watching, so I can tell who my audience is. It helps me write my stories. Bessie May's phone rang at 3:24 a.m. She rubbed her eyes. Looking at the phone, it was Beauregard. Usually, she didn't have to get up in the middle of the night, but Fallon expected her to babysit Beauregard. She got so tired of dealing with him. He was Fallon's relative, not hers. But honestly, Beauregard lacked so much common sense, she didn't know how he even found his way out of the birth canal. The other end of the line had that grating voice. Fallon said if I had any county removal with the sheriff involved, I had to call you to assist me, so get out here. He was rude, as usual. She dressed quietly to not awaken Earl and left him a short note where she was headed. Knowing Beauregard, this would probably be a long night and stressful. So she picked up a coffee with extra espresso from a drive-thru. Better to load up on caffeine for dealing with Mr. It is acceptable for him to be an idiot, but not acceptable for her to point out his stupidity. I swan, she thought. If his brain was chocolate, it wouldn't fill an M&M. Meanwhile, Sheriff Tate was on the phone to the volunteer police chief. Ned, this is Tate. We're going to need some help out here on County Line 24, mile marker 37, to lift a body out of a mine shaft. Just one man should do it. You'll see my lights from the road. Nope. Don't know who the deceased is, whether female or male or cause of death. 2 teens happened to see it when they were out for a midnight stroll. Thanks. She met Beauregard, who was already railing at Sheriff Tate. Danged ruts play havoc with the springs on my Suburban. I should charge extra for county removals. Where's the body? The sheriff pointed to a shallow mine shaft with his flashlight. An excavation? I'm going to need help. You can't expect me to do it alone. Don't worry, Beauregard. I called a man from the volunteer fire department to assist you. Beauregard ran around like a chicken with his head cut off. What's going on, Beauregard? Bessie May wanted to know. Foul play may be involved. Not sure. Woohoo! Anyway, I organized some help that should be arriving any minute. Body bags in the Suburban. This is just like an episode off CSI. Do you ever watch that program, Bessie Mae? His one eye stared at Bessie Mae while the glass one oscillated between the sheriff's cruiser with the red and blue lights and watching the constellations in the sky. His glass eye was busy, 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 and more than a little distracting in itself. Okay, Beauregard, let's just take a deep breath and calm down. We're going to treat this removal like any other removal and be professional. Beauregard heard a noise in the night and jumped back. It was only a toad. Remember, Bessie Mae reminded him, remain calm. Now, where's the body? In a mine shaft. Can you believe that? That is just like a crime show, a whodunit show. I bet the villain was the philandering, filthy rich husband. He was probably running around on his wife with a flashy showgirl named Scarlet Flamingo or something like that in Las Vegas. Why, I bet he hired an assassin to shoot down the poor woman with a silencer and dump her in this hole where no one would ever find her. He shook his head back and forth. Just the buzzards to pick her poor bones clean. Sad, sad, sad. Bessie Mae tried to make heads or tails of what was going on. So the body is a female? Well, no, not exactly. The sheriff hasn't said anything yet. Just there's a body in the bottom of the shaft. Bessie Mae rolled her eyes. Well, I swan, Beauregard, you're the reason this country has to put directions on shampoo. Your brains are as scarce as hen's teeth. Now calm down. Carl from the volunteer fire department pulled up and parked beside the sheriff's cruiser. The sheriff was off canvassing the area, checking for clues. Carl was the third in line of his family to serve Ash Grove. He grinned. I may look more like a hayseed than a professional, but I know my job. Beauregard looked at Carl. Well, goody for you. Bessie Mae stuck out her hand. Ignore Beauregard. Nice to meet you, Carl. Beauregard was his usual. Get in the hole. Why should I go first? I ain't no embalmer. You go first. Okay. Get me that ladder off the truck. This is an expensive suit. Carl jogged off and returned with a toothy grin. I've got my good T-shirt on, wouldn't want to get it dirty. His fire department belt buckle, awarded for 10 years of distinctive service, held up his jeans, covering a lanky frame. He jammed the ladder at Beauregard. Put it in the hole, Carl. Can't you do one thing on your own? Lighten up on him, Beauregard, Bessie Mae said. Carl's not paid to do this. Beauregard grumbled as he climbed down. They sent me an idiot to work with. Carl was right behind him. Pull the ladder up, Beauregard hollered to Bessie Mae. I need room to work down here. Yeah, Carl snickered. He needs plenty of room with his caboose on the loose. Shut up, moron. Beauregard reached up his hands. Bessie Mae, throw me down that body bag. The bag slipped right through them. Nice catch, Slick. I bet in baseball you were about as effective as a rubber-nosed woodpecker in a petrified forest. Shut up and pay attention. You may learn something tonight. Beauregard bent over to pick up the bag and Carl heard a high-pitched hissing sound. What was that? What was hot? What? That sound. What sound? I didn't hear anything. Never mind, Beauregard. I don't have the time nor the crayons to explain it to you. Beauregard started to unzip the bag when something assaulted Carl's nose hairs. He sniffed and then rubbed his nose. What is that? What is what? Don't tell me you can't smell that stench. Smells like we're downwind from an outhouse. He gawked at Beauregard. It's you! We're closer than two roaches on a bacon bit, and you fired off a volley? Ew! And it's hanging on you like a hair on a biscuit? What were you thinking? Shut up, dimwit, it's not my fault. Something crawled up inside you. I can't breathe. Tears were beginning to pool in Carl's eyes. What did you eat for supper? Just the barbecue beans and wing platter with a side of pickled eggs at Lucille's Cafe. Beauregard was trying to squeeze his buttocks tightly. But then he took a step towards the zipped-up bag and a particularly pungent bomb exploded. Carl gasped and covered his nose and mouth with his T-shirt. Ignoramus, Beauregard muttered under his breath. You need to cowboy up. Carl looked up at Bessie May and hollered, Get me out of here! If you don't stop, Beauregard, I'm going to puke for distance. Carl, Bessie May hollered down, you look greener than gooey gourd guts. I'm beginning to detect quite an odor up here. Is that from the body? Carl gagged back. No, it's Beauregard's out of control, enormous, venomous intestine that's a-fixin' to pop. I'm dying. I need oxygen. Get me the ladder so I can get out of here. Bessie May aimed her flashlight. What's wrong with you, Beauregard? It's not my fault. Well, tighten up your pucker string and finish up. You don't need to tell me how to do my job, Bessie May. This isn't my first removal. Bessie May dropped down the ladder. Here, Carl, take my hand. Carl climbed up, grabbed her hand, and collapsed on the dirt at her feet. Air. I need air. I never want to work with that pea-brain again for as long as I live. My lungs can't handle his posterior. He coughed and caught his breath. How do you handle working with him? Well, Carl, if I had my druthers, I wouldn't. He's distant kinfolk to the big boss. Carl struggled to his feet. So I reckon you don't have much choice. She shook her head. If you two are done jawing up there, throw me a rope and you can pull this bag up. Beauregard attached a rope to the head and one to the foot of the bag. Okay, ready? Bessie May grabbed one rope while Carl grabbed the other. We're ready. They heaved together and the body surfaced the shaft. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we got him, Bessie May hollered down to Beauregard. Put that ladder back down here. I'm not getting filthy climbing these walls. Carl looked at Bessie May and grinned. I vote we leave him down there. It'll be mighty nice without his mouth spraying malarkey like fresh cow plops. Real funny, Carl. Remember, when your time comes, Beauregard hollered, I'll be the last one to let you down 6 feet. Carl grinned at Bessie May. If brains were leather, he wouldn't have enough to saddle a June bug. Bessie May chuckled. I can't disagree with you, Carl, but I'm afraid we're going to have to put the ladder down. They loaded the body in the back of Beauregard's Suburban to take to the medical examiner in Dallas. 3 days later, the body was released after determining, despite Beauregard's wishful daydreaming, the individual had died of natural causes. Bessie May and Mary Lynn had embalmed and casketed the body, Mr. Weinbauer, and were waiting for Beauregard to pick him up for the service. It was 9:15 a.m. and Beauregard's hearse was under the Dallas awning. Bessie May and Mary Lynn closed the casket and rolled it out to Beauregard's hearse. Fallon walked out the back door with Beauregard. "Did you get a new latch on the rear door of the hearse like I ordered?" Beauregard snapped. "I've got it under control. Jake Raven at the gas station said it just needed adjusted." "I told you to get it replaced," Fallon said. Beauregard clenched his teeth. "Remember, Fallon, you made me Ash Grove's manager. I've got everything under control." Bessie May shoved the heavy casket onto the rollers in the back of the hearse and started to slam the door. "Stop," Beauregard ordered. "I'll close it. The memorial book isn't in yet. I do tend to details." Shortly before 11 a.m., Fallon raced to the stateroom where Bessie May and Mary Lynn were arranging flowers. Fallon was breathless. "Beauregard just called. He lost the body." "What body?" Mary Lynn asked. "Mr. Weinbauer, the one he left with in the hearse this morning in Ash Grove. That airhead went to open the back door of the hearse. It was ajar and the casket was gone." Mary Lynn's jaw dropped. "How can that happen?" "Well, not too hard, Mary Lynn. If you don't replace the lock on the hearse like I ordered and blare music all the way to the music, and you snack on chips all the way, and who knows what else. You two need to find that casket with the body. The service is scheduled for 4:30 this afternoon." Bessie May and Mary Lynn ran to the Suburban and gunned it. "Stay glued to the window for any sign of a casket, Mary Lynn." "Well, that's a phrase I never thought I'd hear." Mary Lynn laughed nervously. 40 miles southwest of nowhere, they saw flashing lights on the county road ahead. Bessie May slowed the vehicle to a crawl and stopped in back of a black and white, blocking both lanes of traffic. She rolled down her window. "What's the problem, Deputy?" "Deputy Fitz, ma'am," he said as he pulled up his pants and stuck out his chest. "Sorry to hold you up, but there's an accident of the strangest sort ahead." Bessie May drummed her fingers on the steering wheel. "Can we drive past in the barrel pit?" "No, ma'am. Part of the debris is in the ditch, too. It's part of the crime scene. We're trying to get this cleared as fast as we can. I sure never seen the likes of this. The man zipped along here on this here road, so until we can verify his name, ma'am, we've been calling him Zippy." Bessie May tried to smile, but time was not on their side to find Mr. Weinbauer. "We too have a real emergency, Deputy." Fitz looked up at the sky and drawled, "Talk about an emergency. Zippy didn't have one stitch of ID on him and no vehicle. Dar he was, just sprawled out in the middle of the highway on his back, looking all peaceful like, arms folded over his chest, just like a bump on a log. I reckon he was ready to push up daisies, headed for the last roundup, going out with his boots on, belly up, dead as a doornail." We get it," Bessie May interrupted. Bessie May and Mary Lynn looked at each other. Was he dressed in a dark blue suit with a red striped tie? Mary Lynn asked. The deputy's eyes widened, and his mouth gaped like a dying carp. Are you two psychics? I've seen those kind on TV talk shows. Never met one in person. No, Bessie May answered. Funeral directors. Fitz's eyes drooped, and his shoulders drooped. He seemed a little agitated that they were not the celebrities he had hoped for. Well, whatever, he's dead for sure, so you're in time, the deputy said. There was an accident earlier, Bessie May started to explain. I know there was an accident. Ain't you been listening? I told you. Zippy bit the dust. He breathed his last one, smoked his last cigarette. Got it, Deputy Fitz, Marilyn said as she stepped out of the Suburban while Bessie May parked on the side of the road. A hearse with a faulty latch drove on this road earlier. The door flew open and the casket slid out. We came to find Mr. Weinbauer for his service this afternoon. Fitz thought he understood. Zippy, Mr. Weinbauer, he was your loved one? Mary Lynn shook her head. No. The deputy aimed at the fence and spit. Well, there's a problem. The body's evidence. I'm not sure what happened, but if there's been a crime, Zippy's evidence. Bessie May said, since there were no vehicles involved, technically there was no accident here. There wasn't even a crime. What we have here is a lost and found situation. We lost a body and you found him. We have simply come here, Deputy, to claim him. The deputy stared at her. You're joshing me, right? Bessie May stepped up to Fitz. I assure you, Deputy, I'm not joking. Mary Lynn was obviously frustrated. Deputy, if Bessie May were joking, she would have said a rabbi, a priest, and a duck waddled into a bar and... Mary Lynn, I've got this, Bessie May said. I do, however, Deputy, need you to release Mr. Weinbauer, the body, to us. Well, I don't rightly know if I can, ma'am. I don't know if you have the right. Bessie May took a step closer. Under Texas Code 87394B, this body cannot be held as evidence, and attempting to do so is a federal offense that can result in a $10,000 fine or 5 years imprisonment or both. Deputy Fitz's eyes widened. Well, I reckon I ain't familiar with that law, ma'am. I'm not surprised, Deputy. It's a federal law, and unless you're in the funeral business, it's not enforced all that often. This is a lost and found case. We lost the body, you found it, and we're here to claim it. He scratched his chin. Well, I don't have a place to store him. We don't have a mortuary in town, and I sure wouldn't want to break any federal laws. I appreciate that about you, Deputy. That fine and incarceration is pretty steep. Yeah, yes, ma'am. I'd be glad to sign any release forms you might have, and I'd be glad to take care of the federal forms for you, Bessie May calmly assured the deputy. Well, ma'am, I guess he didn't break no law. Well, maybe vagrancy, but I reckon I could overlook that. I don't know what I'd do with him. I can't get rid of him. Well, he's kind of like a booger I can't thump off. Bessie May laid her face on the hearse so he wouldn't see the look, the strain on her eyeballs as she rolled them. She turned around and added, Deputy Fitz, we're going to treat Mr. Weinbauer with utmost respect here. There was no crime, and we do need to get him to the service. It would be a loving thing you could do for the grieving family. Since you put it that way, ma'am, all right. The body's over there. I covered him with a tarp I had in my trunk. I piled the wood there. It's shot to... He looked at Marilyn. Well, it's destroyed. We'll deliver the body to the funeral and then return and clean up the mess, Bessie May promised. All right. Go get him. Well, I don't know what kind of paperwork I need for that law you mentioned, but I need to get it taken care of, ma'am. Don't you worry about that, Deputy. I'll handle everything, Bessie May promised. Yes, ma'am. You see you do. Oh, yes, Deputy. I will indeed. After they had loaded Mr. Weinbauer, Marilyn whispered, You made up that law, didn't you, Bessie May? Bessie May smiled. Got into the Suburban and turned the key. Called Beauregard to have a casket ready and a blue suit. Marilyn relayed the information. Beauregard was enraged. The black walnut casket? Those things don't grow on trees. They cost a fortune. Marilyn sighed. You do know walnut is a kind of tree, but gave up trying to reason with Beauregard. Talking to him was about as sane as talking to the deputy. Listen, Beauregard, are you always this stupid, or are you just making a special effort today? Then she hit end on the phone. She didn't always have to worry about etiquette. After all, she was the boss's daughter. Bessie May pulled into Ash Grove, where Beauregard was waiting. He grabbed the door of the hearse and immediately issued orders. The prep room's ready. Suits behind the door. I've got to run memorial folders. The back of the body's in bad shape, but not irreparable, Bessie May mumbled. They were suturing cuts when Beauregard stuck his head in the door. Don't bother bathing the body. Nobody will know. I'll know. Besides that, this man's going out with some dignity, Bessie May vowed. Don't fiddle around and make the service run late. He turned and slammed the door. Ain't that the berries? Bessie May stared daggers at the closed door. Lord, I know you love Beauregard, and I'm trying, but it's hard. She looked at Marilyn. I'm not sure we can trust him with Mr. Weinbauer. Marilyn said, we're going to have to. We've got a pile of wood by the side of the road to clean. And you've got that federal paperwork to fill out for Deputy Fitz to keep him from paying a fine and ending up locked away in the big house. Bessie May just grinned. I hope you've had a smile or two, and I hope you have a blessed day.